Okay, so this session is being recorded now.
All right, beautiful. Thank you so much to everybody, and a warm, chilly welcome to everybody, depending on where you are located, whether it's in Australia, one of our states, or whether you're overseas. So certainly a warm welcome to everybody. My name is Leanne Ngo, and we have a special session today. And as part of our Ascolite Learning Design Special Interest Group, we've partnered up with our Ascolites Community Mentoring Program to offer a special program for individuals who are interested in research. And it's a program that we initiated this year based on feedback that we've had over the last 18 months ago around individuals in our community wanting to know what research is about. And it wasn't just stemming from our professional staff members, but it was also around early careers, individuals wanting to get into the research space. And I want to prep this session. We are looking at an introduction to this and an introduction to research for third space professionals. And we know that the concept, the idea of third space, it is quite an interesting area as well. And that's why we have quite a lot of folks here today, and we are very open to everyone's feedback and contributions to this. But today we have 4 speakers today. So we have Kashmira Dave, Camille, we have Richard, and also myself here, where we're part of this Learning Design Special Interest Group community mentoring program, where we have a set of mentees and also mentors, part of a year program to look at supporting individuals with research and navigating that space. Next slide, please. But before we go straight into it, I would like to acknowledge our traditional owners in which we are currently situated in, and please do feel free to pay your respects inside the chat area as well. And certainly where I'm currently located, you know, I'm very grateful for the sustenance, for all the land, water, fauna and flora that that's surrounded by me, and pay respects to our elders past, present, and emerging. And I certainly would like to extend this respect to everyone else here today of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. All right, next slide, please. Thank you. Just a quick plug about the Special Learning Design Interest Group. And for many of you, there are a lot of familiar faces and also names in the list as well. You're more than welcome to join us. We have a LinkedIn group and it's open to everybody there. And obviously, just acknowledge our co-conveners as well. We have Kashmira, myself, and Keith and Kate, who's also in that third space area and supporting our community as well. So this year we do have the research CMP program. We've got webinars, and we're also looking at creating resources and building community in this area. The conference that's coming up, and obviously there's calls for papers. We're looking forward to being there in Adelaide. But there's one thing that we haven't put on the slide here. Our program here, our research mentoring program, is almost like a stepping stone to Ascolite's renowned research excellence, the Spring to Research Excellence. And I believe that's like a 3-day kind of program, which is led by fantastic individuals across our Ascolite community. And that's happening later in the year as well. And I believe that's already been advertised. Yep. And you're more than welcome to have a look at that. But this is a session that we want to just introduce research for third space individuals. Maybe move. Yeah. I'll continue as well. Next slide, please. All right, hopefully it's back. Beautiful. All right, so our special form of learning design with our CMP program, we have 5 special sessions around research, and it's an introductory set of topics for third space professionals, certainly for professionals looking to get into research, wanting to know what it is, and also for early career academics as well. So please take note of this. It's also promoted in our Ask-A-Like newsletter as well. So please have a look at that. Everyone anywhere are more than welcome to attend. All right, thank you. All right, so the topic is on introduction to research in for third space individuals. And what I want to do, we have 3 other speakers with us today, and I want to start off by really going broad, but also sharing my journey as well. So I think that's important to cover some areas of topic, but also share some the journey that we've gone through. And I believe that this webinar is for anyone in the third space, role. And for me, it's I've been in the area of higher education for over 20 years. And I can see right now, you're probably looking at the list of roles that are there, and there are many over the last 20 years. And you can see I've navigated across student support, across teaching, across learning design, even across technology assessment, and then also across leadership as well. And you can see some of my earliest job is in student enrollment officer and also working in an IT service department as well. But you can see that across all of that, I've moved in many different areas, whether it's in the teaching roles, in the sessional space, to academic lecturer, to subject coordinator, to even, managing and looking after the whole course as well. And you can see that along the way, some of my journey has also shifted into that learning design, that digital online space, and then names have changed to educational technologists, helping others teach better, understanding the learning. And often it was through tech during that time as well. And I later stepped into academic development and leadership, looking at assessment, curriculum development, and then more recently into more leadership roles around supporting growing the team in teaching and learning, to curriculum development, looking at program-wide approach, and then more recently now, leading the space in student experience and employability. And I guess when I reflect on this, I didn't start as a researcher back that 20 years ago. And you can see my roles, it's a combination of professional, then academic, then professional. And now my role at the moment now is an academic, but teaching focused academic. But I like to say that 50% of my role deals with industry engagement as well, which I haven't put in there, industry engagement and support and mentoring and coaching. But as I said, it didn't start as a researcher. It started as a problem solver, and it gave me, new ways of seeing things, not just what worked, but also what didn't as well. And with the problem solving things, I was able to notice gaps, trying to fix things and wondering why wasn't this working this way? Why isn't it working for students? How can we teach better? How can we support staff better? How can we do things differently? So looking at identifying these gaps. And I didn't realize at the time, but I was already doing research, thinking reflectively, asking these questions and trying to make things better. Just to next slide, please, Kashmira. And then over the span of 20 years, I was thinking about all of this, and I can give you, I've been involved in multiple projects, and one of the research projects I've been involved in is around e-portfolios. And I can give you an example where we introduced e-portfolios to help students with employability. Because at that time, we're talking about 15 years ago, right? And at that time, we're looking at course design and, designing content in there, and the idea of authentic assessments, real world examples, bringing that in was starting to emerge. And the idea of portfolios was one of those things where we were able to look at all that from a course-wide approach and have this idea of employability embedded in. But we had students that weren't engaging, and neither were the staff engaging. And we noticed that there were a few patterns, there were problems in this. One, staff members weren't sure about the assessment alignment. And then when we thought about it, it was more so, did they even understand concept of employability? Did we articulate that properly? What does authentic assessment mean? Authenticity, so all those things came up quite a long time ago. And from a student's point of view, when we were looking at assessments and designing that and the learning outcomes around that, they were confused about, the purpose, the audience, was it relevant, and the value of this, what was in it for me, what was the purpose for me, who would value this at the end. And then we also noticed that the digital capabilities, the professional capabilities, the skill sets, were they designed and embedded in the courses really well? So there were opportunities there that we saw that there were issues. And it wasn't a tech problem back then. Well, could be as well, but for me, it wasn't that. But it was more a learning design kind of issue and around making things relevant for the actual student in itself. So again, for me, it was thinking about that. So I realized that with all of that, it sparked my research interest about portfolio. So, so how we can actually support the idea of digital identity and self-reflection and looking at employability and the opportunities to showcase their skills across the whole course and not just the subject. So, the research for me didn't start with a typical literature review back then. It started off with listening, noticing and observing, and also caring as well to identify what the gaps are in that. And the questions I had weren't academic at first, but they were practical. Why weren't students engaging? Why were staff unsure? So, and looking at those answers turned into something more. And that's where it kind of started off, where the research began as well. And obviously working with people and colleagues in that space. Can you move on to the next slide? So I guess on this one is, why research, why you, why now? And I can appreciate that individuals here today in the third space are from, wonderful areas, whether you're in industry, higher education, or in different levels, different areas, different disciplines. And for me, my personal journey, it's important to think about, if you've ever stopped to ask, how can we do this better? It's almost the start of your research to think about that. If you ever reflected on your work and noticed that there were patterns or you want to try new ideas because you care, well, that's the start of research as well. You don't need to wait for some type of title or grant or supervisor there to support you. But you're already doing it, and it's in your practice, in your questions, in your care factor as well for your learners, your colleagues. And it's important to have a think about it. And I'll leave this with you as a takeaway. So I've always had, in the last 20 years in my career, research isn't something that you start with, but it's something that you realize that you're already doing. And I think those in the third space, and there's always contentious issues around academic and the roles, etc., around that. But I believe, in my journey as well, what I've, been able to explain here, my lived experiences, you're already doing research some way, somehow around that. And what we'll cover later in today's session is around, research questions and research methodology and some of the challenges and some of the solutions that we may have for you based on our experiences over time. All right, so thank you, Kashmira. I'm going to throw it over to Richard.
Can you hear me? Thank you.
Yep. Yes.
Thank you. I'm also from La Trobe, and I've been with La Trobe for to be 35 years. I came from the industry. I spent 10 years there in the industry. Then I was motivated to leave the industry and to be an academia, because I just want to pass on my knowledge to the next generation of computer scientists. My specialization is in software engineering. I have produced 15 PhD students. Then that actually gave me a very good background in doing research, including teaching and learning. Now, today, what I share with you is that I I bring to you some of my previous experiences in doing research in my disciplinary area and also doing research in teaching and learning. What I find is that there relationship, and which I will present to you. And what we learn, what we experience before could be of use, whichever discipline you are from. And so today, my topics, the topics that I've been given is that how to formulate a research question. Because when you do research, everything starts off, what is the problem that you are trying to solve? What is the definition of your research question? If you're not able to answer that, then we cannot go further. And also, if we were to come up to the research question, has anybody done it before? If there's someone on earth who has done it, then we finish also. So we also make to ensure that there is a research gap in the literature, that no one has done it before or no one has done it in a similar way. Then the research question could be the same, but the approach could be different. Is my approach different from the rest of the world? Now, okay, I shall present four approach. Four approaches, and based on my experience, based on theories that I pick up from the literature. Well, how do I identify or formulate research question and find out the research gap through my own experience? And about 3 or 4 years, I changed from being a teaching and research staff to teaching focused staff. I just concentrate on teaching. And my specialization in teaching is PhD supervision and curriculum design. And then how does it reward third place? When you design a curriculum, you also need other people's support, IT support, etc. First approach, from my own experience, I've been teaching for 35 years. I myself experienced some problems. Then one of the very obvious problem is students are not engaged. Students don't turn up for lectures. By and large, statistically, 10%, you'd be lucky if you get 20% will turn up to your lectures. Then we say, students are not, if they are not engaged, how can they learn? So that's the question is, what caused the student not being engaged? And what can I do to enhance student engagement? Are we, the information technology or computer science lecturers like myself, are the only one who got this problem? Can technologies help to improve student engagement? These are the questions that I ask myself. Do you have similar problem? I'm a computer scientist. Do you students turn up all your lectures? What's the percentage? I'd like to get your opinion. Can someone say anything? 20%, 30%, 50%? What's your experience? Can someone say just to help me, help others? Am I the only one who got this problem? I don't get an answer. Lots of people not teaching. Okay. Now, but can I go back to, because I will go through this, can I go back to the previous slide? If you're not teaching, then if you're professional people, you can help to help us in getting students more engaged. And so further down is what does the literature say about students' non-engagement? So I bump into this paper, which say, well, it's common. Then what's the problem is there's also could be unknown alignment between staff and students' perception of engagement. So what's the research gap? Could there be different perception of what engagement is? So the research question, the research gap is, could the definition of engagement be redefined? So that is one example, one approach. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Second approach, multidisciplinary approach. I'm a computer scientist, and in particular software engineering. There has been a concept called computational thinking. Anyone heard of that? It is about that we want to train people, professional people in any discipline, to solve a problem in a way that's similar to how computer programmers solve a problem. Basically, it's just divide and conquer. Divide the big problem into smaller problems. So they say the steps are decomposition, abstraction, pattern recognition, and designing an algorithm to solve the problem. And the current status is that the term is the dated back in 1980. And then recently, there's a computer science professor, Janet Wing. She was from Carnegie Mellon University, CMU. CMU, we regard it as the #1 university in software engineering. Next, can you please go back to the previous slide? And then currently she's with Columbia University. She published a paper in Communication ACM. ACM is, we regard ACM as the highest organization which commands the highest level of respect in computing. Then through her paper, then the whole world, she got the attention of the whole world to doing something about computational thinking. The questions then, and now today, even computational thinking is taught in high school and in higher education institutions around the world, not just within computer science. As far as I know, biological science, medical sciences, and so on, because they have to deal with big data. How do you analyze it? You got a problem, then how do you decompose it, and so on? It's quite well established. This has been applied to non-computer science discipline. So the question is, how can we do it better in non-computer science discipline? Next slide, please. My third approach, through conducting a systematic review. Well, if we want to do something that is no one has done it, we have to consult the literature. But what I find is that you must start out with something that you're interested in, at least an area. You might not be able to come up with a research question yet. So if that is your case, you scan the literature, what has been published. However, what I find is that if you do not have anything in mind, you just scan the literature, what did this guy, what did he do, what did she do, and so on. It's not that productive. So there's a concept in
2 minutes, Richard.
Sorry?
2 minutes.
Okay. Systematic review, that we say that we have to conduct review in a systematic way. So that's published in this paper. Next page, please. And then there is another approach is through my own reflection on the existing theories. Constructive alignment is we've been asked to use constructive alignment in our teaching. And constructive alignment developed by John Biggs is adopted throughout the world, very popular. But as I practice it and taught it, use it, then I find that there's some problems, some issues, like it doesn't take into consideration the students' learning behavior, and does one big exam, one big assignment achieve the outcome, etc. Then I scan the literature, then there's no answer to it. Then I do my own research and then come up with the new enhanced constructive alignment pedagogy called constructive progressive alignment. So this is my experience in presenting to you in the 4 approaches in picking up a research question and ensure that this is a gap, no one has done it. Thank you.
Thanks
Hi
for-
all. I'm okay. I'm on. I hope you guys are enjoying the session thus far. I'll do a little bit about what Leanne did, and I'll just give 30 seconds to explain it. My history is really, really colorful, just like Leanne's own is. I started off in the States, where I was our partner title called an instructional designer, but I was an academic as well in the States for a number of years. And then I came over to Australia, where I was an academic and educational designer at Melbourne, University of Melbourne. And then I came to UTS 3 years later, leading a team of academic instructional designers as well. And now I've made a transition from that space back into academia, where I am head of research, but also still do a little bit of instructional design on the side. All right. So thanks a lot for having me. Next slide, please, Kashmir. And I'm going to talk about choosing a methodology. So where Leanne and Richard has given you the foregrounding of how you would start your research or how you would think about your research, you need to understand that choosing a methodology very much depends on your research question. It's not that you choose your methodology first and then you get your research questions. You get your research questions, try and find out what it is you would like to know first, and then you find your methodology. And based on those questions, your research and how your questions are phrased, they tend to be in one of two buckets, which is quantitative or qualitative, right? And if it's and sometimes it's a little mixture in the middle there. But for us, in this space of third space and where it is, most of the research tends to be in the qualitative space. But I'm going to address the qualitative space first. And quantitative space is best used for generalizations about the population. It will be great for someone to actually think about investigating what is the population of learning designers in any given space, whether it's geographically in Australia or the whole world, experience or do. And you can count that. That's what quantitative means. You can count that. And maybe it could be skill-based. So that's just an idea of what you would do when it comes with quantitative research. And your questions tend to be hypothesis aligned. So either it's true or it's not. Right? It's no, and there are variations of truths and there are variations of nots. And that's what quantitative research does. So sometimes your questions would start with, is a learning designer this? Or are the people in this region more prone to this learning design skill? Those are the kinds of questions you may get in your quantitative alignment there. And the result is to show that you understand generally about something about the population. That's what that kind of method would do. Your size is N, it's normally large, and you typically get to do some basic descriptive statistics. But what we have, next slide please, is mostly qualitative research coming out of this space, all right? Where you try to understand a phenomenon and understand the deep intricacies of interactions, behaviors, experiences, etc. Right? Innate characteristics. I know I love to look at innate characteristics that can't be shown on the face, things that people do within themselves. And typically the questions here start off with how, why, or what. All right? And then you get to deeper knowledge of what's going on and why that knowledge exists the way it does. All right? Your N can be smaller, right? Sometimes a lot of people do groups of small batches of N to create one long group, or they may take each of those N's, those little small N's, and thematically assign them and align them. Yep. Next slide, please. So like I said at the beginning, you can have a mixture of both quantitative and qualitative. And coming out of that, the methods that you would typically end with in terms of your findings are maybe case studies. I think case studies are the biggest one and biggest group. And that leads also to ethnographies, right? Very few of us do theoretical or conceptual analyses. And this is something for you to think about, all right? When we talk about concepts, concepts look like, why do this theory say this, but we do this? And how that can be linked, all right? There are a lot of theories we ascribe to, social cognition, or situated cognition, or something we ascribe to, Vygotsky's theory. And does it really relate to us? And how is it action? Activity theory. How does that action within our practice? Yeah. Design cases are something that not many people in Australia do or understand. They're not the same as a case study. Design cases, think about it from the perspective of what work you do in your design practice, and you make that into a case. All right, Elizabeth Bowling has championed this space, and she's in the States, and she has a journal that just accepts design cases. And she really promotes the idea of the importance of understanding the strategic decisions, the infrastructure decisions, all these different decisions that we make and need to make in this as designers to get our designs fruitful and successful as a product. All right. So if you want to look at design cases, do look at that. And the methodology that ties with that is DBR, which is design-based research. All right. Another type of research that we typically do is action-based research, which is much shorter and is more about process improvement. So if we are working in a structured environment as a designer, where you do this first, you do this second, and you do this third, is that working for all cases, or should it be tweaked? And therefore, looking at that as a research component in terms of the structure, in terms of what can be improved and what can be, cut out or revamped or something, some form, then that would help there, an action research. But I am not prescribing, could you go back a bit, Kashmir? I'm not prescribing that these are the methods that you ascribe to. There's no prescription here. It depends on what you're investigating. It depends on what measures that you're looking to measure, right, in your research question. And it also depends on what is the purpose of your research and where is it going to. Last slide. Thank you. All right. So I just want to talk about some traps not to fall into. Copying other research studies because it seems cool. They did that. They did that. Oh, I should do that too. That's not a good idea. That's not a good reason to do research. All right. If you have a problem and it's deeply rooted and you're not sure why it occurs, do some initial investigation. And that initial investigation is, and should tie to the second point, is do a proper literature review. You can do a literature review scan, a scoping literature review. It doesn't have to be thorough. Do something as simple as putting some keywords into Google Scholar. See what pops up. See who else has talked about things differently in that space. Research the phenomenon. Research what you're looking at as the problem space and seeing who else has written about it. Now, when you look at who else has written about it, it does not mean it has to be in our space. It could be in engineering. It could be in medical sciences. It could be practicing nurses who do something similar that we do. That gives you a trajectory for a gap. That's what Richard just pointed to. Yep. Then writing about it, when you get to that part about it, writing and formulating your research questions, which will tie you to your methodologies, understanding the history of the discipline. There are many researchers, when I was an editor, that I would read, and they're just duplication of effort. No one has the history or the what we call the seminal work in there to support the research ideas. That is important. And that's why a lot of articles get rejected, that they have not really linked their research and their literature review back to what is said about the field. And lastly, saying you're investigating something that you cannot define with published literature is the biggest trap. If I wake up in the morning and my knees hurt, is the example I give my research students all the time. My knees hurt, and there's no literature to support that my knees should hurt when I wake up in the morning. Guess what? That's a me problem. That's not a research problem. All right? If you can identify that you have a problem and there has some evidence of a gap or anything that is tied to literature, that will show you that this is actually a literature, no one has written about this, and there's no support for it, and there should be support for it, and you will see the little pebbles in the literature saying that, then you have a research study. It's not because you wake up in the morning and you feel you have a research study, you have one. Okay, that's it, Kashmir. Thank you.
We can't hear you.
Kashmir, I think you're muted.
Sorry, yeah. So I'll be just talking about the challenges and possible solutions. Now, we know that there are some problems that in third space research that we cannot solve because it's at higher order, and I will briefly talk about it. But so just very briefly about me, I switched between professional and academic role quite a few times in my life, and so I have kind of like understanding of what I faced and how that all worked out for me. So I'll be just talking about those few things that I faced, and I know from my colleagues who are in third space. So we all know that we have like an academic versus professional divide, and you will feel it. So no matter how deep understanding that you have about the topic, sometimes just because we are in third space, so probably we are a professional staff. I wrote in one of my paper that my academic credentials were kind of overshadowed by my professional standing because I was a learning designer. So that is prevailing, and we will talk about how you can kind of like make your way through. Not every academic is like, no, I don't want you on my research project, but there are ways, and I think the institutional challenges as well to be able to for us to get into that space. And that brings me to my second point around policies around who can apply for the ethics. My personal conversation with lots of learning designer, I know that there are some universities where they literally stop learning designers or any learning design or professional staff to be a chief investigator, no matter what their knowledge is, and many of us are PhD as well, but we still don't get to because we are just the professional staff. I have also heard that universities and the managers actively discourage professional staff to get into research. So these are like organizational and at a team level, that kind of issues, but there are other issues for us as an individual as well, which is lack of skills in evidencing the success among us. So what I mean by that is that you heard like Leanne and other speakers saying about you are already doing it, but have you considered evidencing it? And I learned it very hard way because when I was going for interview and say, yep, I did this and this, and where is the evidence? And once you leave the institution, you don't have any evidence because they're sitting sometimes probably behind the login. You have a learning management system or interfaces that you've designed, which is behind the login as well. So creating those evidences, having screenshots and things that awareness when you're doing that work to document in many different forms that we will talk about in a second. There are also issues around consent and intellectual property in evidencing. So for example, if I am a learning designer working for a with an academic on a unit, academic might say, no, that's my unit, and taking screenshot or having names or anything that might require, and that requires academics consent. And that's also bring me to the idea of parity and also acknowledgement of the contributions of professional staff into what was produced as a project or in a unit design. I also see that there is a issue of like established identity in our purpose. So who are we? Where are we coming from? What is our background? This is all like still very muddled. So I just don't want to take a lot of time because I want to just leave some time for questions. But what I discussed with other learning designers, and there are some here, I will just let them speak as well. So building relationship with academics and having that a trustworthy relationship where you can say that, okay, I want to have this screenshotted, or I want to have this recorded, or that when they're talking about something in their units, if relevant, you can go and talk about how, for instance, in the very first lecture, you can say, I will go with you to the academic and say, I will talk about how they navigate through this particular unit and where they should go for what. That's your relationship building. Documenting the process, keeping records of processes and screenshot, which is important, and create your own portfolio of work. Either you keep it on your own website or your any private space, that's up to you. But one of the most important thing that I have learned as a professional staff is that getting into research is a lot easier if I am in a collaborative setting. So I have academics or other people doing research, or cross-institutional. So if you are a learning designer and other universities learning designer, you get together and do a collaborative research, because universities have different ways of doing things. And for example, in the University of New England at the moment where I am, anybody can apply for research. It's not like professional staff cannot be a chief investigator. You can, as long as you show your credentials and you know that this is the area that I'm working in, and I am I'm very good at what I'm doing. Just do a lot of reflection. And usually my practice is to open a Word document and go through, just start the dictation tool and talk, and just save that somewhere. And that means that is your autoethnographic, or when you want to use your reflections as a collaborative autoethnography or autoethnography, you can do that. So these are a few things. Now I have Kate Michelle here, who is a learning designer. I think that she is like a really good example of how she navigated as a professional staff to and do research and be active into. So Kate, would you like to say a few words around how you navigated your way through?
Yeah, sure. I'll keep it really brief. I try and be quite strategic because obviously everybody has limited time. So for me, and I also know my own gaps and limitations and weaknesses, both in research and just personally in how I work. And so for me, I deliberately collaborate with others because I know that you know, we can work to each other's strengths, and people like Kashmira often give me a kick up the bum to get work done, which is really helpful for me. The other thing is that I kind of look at, like, sometimes it can be politically difficult if it's not part of your PD plan or career development plan as a professional staff member. Sometimes people don't want you to even mention research, or it's not allowed in your workload allocation, or and different institutions will be different around these things. What I found is that generally, if it's reading literature, I can, you know, I can couch that at least under reading if it's tied to my role, and then do the kind of writing and publishing outside of hours if I where I need to. And then if I'm working with other academic staff, they may be able to put the ethics application in on our behalf. You know, I can probably still get tied to those research projects as, you know, as a secondary investigator, especially if it's tied to a faculty project. So it's really just, I guess, looking at, like, figuring out where those inroads are and trying to leverage what you can to make that work. So those are the things that I found have been useful for me. The other things that I do are to kind of use, and I agree with Camille that you should start with your research question, but I guess noting that, like, certain methodologies are kind of easier to do in practice where you may not need ethics applications for them. So orthoethnography, for example, would, you know, is really kind of individual reflections, and ideally that's something that we as learning designers or other third space workers are doing anyway as part of our practice, is, you know, documenting the process that we go through, taking evidence around that, reflecting on what we've done. And if you kind of do that in a regular or systematic way, you can then turn that into other things, whether that's an autoethnographic research piece, potentially also reuse that for things like CMALT or HEA fellowships. So just being strategic around what can I already use and get access to, that maybe won't cause, you know, blockers, you know, while also trying to support those relationship pieces and finding allies across spaces. But, you know, there's ways to kind of, I guess, you know, use what you have and just get, just try and fit it in to workload and be systematic where you can about what things can I, you know, reuse, and that are going to be, I guess, high impact activities for me in terms of working them into the time and work that I already do.
Thank you, Kate. Now, I think we will open the floor for any questions that we might have.
I just wanted to come back to Kate's point about some instances where you can use methods that don't need ethics. Let's be very, very careful saying that, because I was corrected by our ethics committee over here, because I said the same thing in a workshop 2 weeks ago. So if you're using public data, no ethics, right?
Mm.
If you're writing about yourself and the others you're writing about are also on the authorship, no ethics. If I'm writing about myself and I say about my dad or my mom or somebody else in my own narrative of my lived experience is contributing to how I feel, you will need ethics.
Mm.
Because you've now mentioned a third party who may be harmed by what you're saying. Because ethics is all about, are you harming the participants? So just be very, very careful. I was corrected, and they are absolutely right. We can use no ethics methods with autoethnography and with certain case studies and ethnographic work. That's great. But be careful if you start mentioning other people who are not part of the authorship. You will require ethics.
Thanks, Camille. Naomi?
So just to clarify, Camille, what if you're saying something like, if you're doing autoethnographic and you're saying, say, the team in general, like you're referring to the team, not particular people, would you still need ethics?
Well, if it is that you're a named daughter and that
Mhm.
part of the ethnography which you are sharing in your write-up is linked to your name, and they can directly go link and see who your theme is, you will
Yep.
need ethics.
Need
A
ethics. Yeah.
good way around that is just saying others.
Others. Okay.
Others had the same feeling.
Yeah.
When you say others had the same feeling, and it's not the best way for your descriptive and your analysis part of it, but
Mhm.
there are ways around it. So just changing the language. So I wrote a piece some years ago where it was instructional designers who are mothers and now and carers dealing with the gamut of university life. We had to cut a lot of that out. In reading it, we were teary-eyed every time we read it, but we had to cut a lot of it out because I mentioned my family members. Some of the other authors mentioned their grandparents and how mean they were, and university professors that didn't understand. So we had to cut a lot of that out because ethics was not applied to it.
Yeah.
So just be careful there.
Thanks.
I'm reading in the chat that Andrea says that scheduling a consultation with an ethics officer at your institution can be very insightful as well. So
Yeah,
thank
but
you.
sometimes the ethics officer wants you to just apply. And it's just because that's their job.
Yeah, and yeah, my experience is that sometimes I
And then
write
you get delayed.
email to them and say, do I need ethics in this? And they will say, well, just do it anyway. So they want to cover themselves, but then that means that you have a lot of work, with if you would do it anyway, kind of ethics application is somewhere between 30 to 50 pages in like most universities. So it's quite a daunting task. Do we have any more
Yeah, I'm just
questions?
responding to Ray. If Ray could clarify the purpose of ethics. So it's called IRB in the States, but ethics. I don't know if you know the history of ethics and why. If you think of the Tuskegee Airmen, if you think of World War II and what was done to people to get research where it is today, there are a number of monumental parts that has happened in history where ethics was not consulted or people weren't asked permission to do work on their bodies, on their minds, on their beings, right? And that's why ethics boards have been formed so that the participants are secured and they are aware of the challenges that they may encounter if published works with their likeness or names are made available. So we do have a number of groups of people that are protected. Prisoners are protected, pregnant women are protected, and children are protected. That's why it's really hard to get ethics for children. All right. So just be mindful that ethics is about harming the participants, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, etc.
Yeah. So if there are any more questions, then people can unmute and ask. Otherwise, I just want to conclude saying that as Leanne has mentioned in the beginning, that this is the first workshop in the series of 5 of them. And we have good speakers, and they will tell you all about publications and what are the different ways that you can publish and how you do it and all of that. So there are few more interesting webinars coming in. So please look out for our advertise. We have already advertised all of them, and I have registration, but we will keep reminding you through newsletter and through the Australian Association for Learning Designer LinkedIn group. So we look forward to see you all there, and have a great afternoon. It's Friday afternoon.
May I ask when the recording will be published?
Tonight.